Well, what's up, guys? So today I'm going to be comparing the 9800 GTX Plus against the GTX 260. As you guys know, these cards kind of came out in the same era. The GTX 260 came out a couple months after the 9800 GTX Plus. My current video card is the 9800 GTX Plus, but my uncle has been nice enough to let me borrow his old GTX 260 and for the time being until I make a decision on a new video card that I want. He's currently running the GTX 460, which is a rockin' card, and I love it. I wish I had the money for it, but when I get the money, maybe I'll be able to buy it. But for today, since I have both of these cards, I figure I'll do some comparing. I'm going to be comparing both cards with the Heaven benchmark. Some of you might be familiar with it. Unfortunately, I won't be able to use the DirectX 11 feature on that benchmark just because both of these cards don't have DirectX 11, but they are both kick-ass cards. As you might be able to tell, they are both made by EVGA, and, well, let's just see how they compare to each other. Alright, before I do any benchmarking and throw either one of these cards back into the system, I just wanted to give you a little show of the GTX 260, as this is a new card to me. It's a wicked card. Unlike my 9800 GTX Plus, it has this wicked case around it that essentially, sucks air in here and just throws it out here. It's great for airflow in your case. And I also just love the fact that the back of the card has this wicked, covering the circuitry on the back, which is awesome because my, 9800 GTX Plus, which is right here, does not have that. And, say what you will, but you don't necessarily want to be putting your paws on that part of the video card. So that's just a wicked thing about that video card alone. This as well has an awesome ventilation system, same sort of concept in here, out here. So just a neat feature of the 260. Alright, so now we're going to benchmark the 9800 GTX Plus. The system that both of these video cards is going to be running on is an Intel Core i7-920 running at 3.3 GHz. Now, the actual card information itself, it is a GeForce 9800 GTX Plus with a core clock of 793 MHz, a shader clock of 1946 MHz, and a memory clock of 1172. Sorry you can't really see those numbers right there. This camera's kind of shitty. And right now the temperature stands at 48 degrees Celsius. The minimum temperature is 47 and the max 48. These temperatures are obviously going to rise as I run the benchmark. Now the benchmark I'm going to be running for today will be the Heaven benchmark. Alright, so now I have the Heaven benchmark control panel open. I'm going to set it to DirectX 10 because neither of these cards can run DirectX 11. Shader set at high. The anti-S, that's just what I call it because I can't pronounce it, to 16. And anti-aliasing to ×2. I'm going to full screen it and my native resolution is 1680 by 1050. Alright, so I now have the benchmark opened and I'm going to benchmark it. And now the benchmarking has started. As you can see, the frames per second are up there. Sorry again, the quality of this camera isn't the greatest, but it's running at about 29 frames per second right now. Alright, so the benchmark just finished for the 9800. Its average frames per second was 30.7. Its score was 773. Its minimum frames per second was 5.3, and its max was 65.1. We'll see how that compares. I also just wanted to show you guys that, again, obviously, its minimum temperature was 47 degrees Celsius, but it hit a max of 66 degrees Celsius. Again, we'll see what the GTX 260 peak temp will be. Alright, so now we are going to benchmark the GTX 260. Again, it is running on the i7-920 system, running at 3.3 GHz. As you can see, here's the card information. It is a GTX 260. The core clock is 621. The shader clock is 1295. The memory clock is 1026. And the temperatures right now as they stand, minimum is 43 and maximum is 45. I also wanted to state before we move on that the 9800 GTX Plus was overclocked by myself. I'm not going to overclock the GTX 260 just because it comes stock overclocked. It's the superclocked edition. Sorry I didn't mention that earlier. But I'm not going to be clocking the GTX 260, and as I said, the 9800 GTX Plus was already clocked. So you saw all the numbers and all the core clocks, so you get a good idea of what each card is running. Alright, and same settings before, DirectX 10, high, running this at 16, and anti-aliasing at ×2, full screen and native resolution of 1680 by 1050. Alright, so the benchmark is just loading up right now. And I'm going to go over here and start the benchmark. Right now, as you can't really tell, but in the top left corner, it is running right now at an average of 30 frames per second again. I'm pretty sure that is pretty much where the 9800 GTX Plus was. Anyway, going to just fast forward to the result. Alright, so the benchmark just finished for the GTX 260, and the results are actually a little bit better. The average frames per second was 35.8 compared to the 9800, which was 30.7. Its overall score for the GTX 260 was 902, and the overall score for the 9800 was 773. And minimum frames per second for the GTX 260 is 20.8, and the max is 69.4 compared to the 9800, which had a minimum of 5.3 and a max of 65.1. So as you can tell, the GTX 260 is just that little bit better. And also you notice that the fluctuation of minimum and maximum frames per second isn't as large as it is on the 9800 GTX Plus. So although some of the core clocks and whatnot were not as high of megahertz as the 9800 GTX Plus, it still comes out on top. And also before I go, as you can see, the minimum of the GTX 260's temperature was 43, and it hit a maximum of 72 degrees Celsius. Now compared to the 9800 GTX Plus, that is a little bit warmer, but nevertheless had better results, and overall is the better card. So, thanks a lot guys, stick around for more videos, and rate and subscribe. Thank you.